How on earth are we using hydrogen to impact dramatic change with the environment and with the current tools and technology that we use? Well, one of the people that's doing that on the forefront of that innovation is Dean. And Dean, we just finished talking about your incredible flying car. Now we're going to talk a little bit about one of the other business structures that you have, and being someone who's focused on modern technologies. You have a business model where you guys are heavily focused on utilizing hydrogen to create a real impact. And it's happening in several different areas where I think people don't realize that it's even possible. So let's start by talking about, how did this business model even show up? How did it cross your desk? And what was the decision to say, yeah, I need to be involved in this?
Um, I have to give Jared English credit. He's the technician. He's the engineer. Basically an engineer in the automotive diesel engine space. I met him over 20 years ago. He's significantly younger than I am. He was just starting his auto repair facility. And I put myself through college twice as a mechanic. That's not my calling. I'll never be as good as those guys are, but I understand my way around a shop. We got to talking and we just became the best of friends instantly. Just something clicked there, that there was just an instant brotherhood. And over the next 20 years, 18 years, he did for me what nobody else could or would. And I did for him what nobody else could or would. Back early on, he basically said, Dean, you know business. I know how to run a shop and fix cars. You run my business, I'll fix cars and run my shop. So he gave me just wide berth to run his shop. So 2018, his shop burns. It takes until late 2019 to get going again. So 2020 rolls around and they're got no customers because of COVID. And we're all basically a bunch of rednecks, very well educated rednecks, but we're rednecks. So he and Terry, who's our chief technical officer, they started deciding they're going to play with hydrogen, start blowing stuff up. And they did. But Jared knew that this would work.
It sounds like a great way for every business to start. Well, they just started playing around and blowing things up.
Yep. That's exactly what they did. They blew up a lot of stuff too. But eventually Jared engineered a machine and figured out how to get them built, where to get them built, and got a couple machines coming over so he could test his theories. And it worked. He's right. And I'm helping with this as he's going along and just thinking, my little brother's doing some really cool stuff. This is fun. This is the good stuff. Well, he started a franchise model. I didn't think that was really all that wise initially, but I knew not to question his judgment on something like that. So I just kind of lean in. And then March of 22, he came to me and he said, Dean, I'm not big enough to do this by myself. He's 14 years younger than I am. So there's an age gap. And he hasn't had the 14 years to build wealth that I have. So he's very well off for someone his age, but he's not hit his peak earning years yet. And I'm in mine. And we've talked through a lot of different models of using debt, going to venture capital, if private equity was interested. Jared's scared to death of debt, like most people are. He's been very, very shrewd with his money and done well, but he's just like, Dean, I can't pull this off by myself. And he said, and I don't trust anybody else. He said, I need you to help me and buy in half the company. And for 40 years, I've been telling people that a marriage is a partnership. A partnership is a marriage, and God told you two men don't need to marry. But there's a time and a place for all things under the sun. And this is my little brother, and he needs me. So go all in. Over that time, we added 17 more franchises. And then the crazy COVID stuff and the insanity, we were able to really hit the COVID stuff hard. And we had a lot of home runs, even though it was real trauma in my office. And it was extremely profitable years. So America needs a paradigm shift. Hydrogen can do a whole lot more than just be a fuel. All for good stuff with fuel, all about it. But that's not the limits of it. It's an awesome cleaning agent when it comes to carbon. And the world needs a paradigm shift. We don't necessarily have to spend a truckload of money to clean up the environment. We can save money and clean up the environment because this technology will reduce your downtime and maintenance cost on equipment and increase fuel economy and reduce gases. We just did a big study with a riverboat, and the reduction in emissions was material. And we're using the only testers the EPA will accept. We're using those to validate. So it's an incredible tool for cleaning. Um, it's also a credible tool to use as a torch. The acetylene is a gas. Usually, that's the gas you normally use if you're going to cut steel. It's very, very heavy. It's very nasty, very caustic. It burns terribly dirty. And acetylene will do the same thing, but it burns perfectly clean. And it costs about $1 an hour to run with this machine, where it costs probably $400 a day to run a torch. Run an acetylene torch. You with the hydrogen torches, you don't store gas. You don't store it. So you don't have explosive gases being stored like acetylene. So you've got big OSHA concerns, big EPA concerns. It's checking all of those boxes and saving money. So, yeah, I think we all know that much of the environmental movement is about making more money and always having a big, expensive solution. Why don't we just start saving money and clean up the environment and just use the hydrogen in innovative ways? So that's what we're trying to break into. We do have our enemies. If I tell a fleet manager that I can lower his costs by up to 30% for maintenance cost and reduce his downtime, I'm telling whoever's currently providing that service, I can cut your revenue 30%. So we have enemies and people that don't like us and people that say it don't work. And I generally tell them, say, well, one of us is lying. Why don't I send my technicians out and prove which one of us is lying? I'll take the risk of loss. And that's our value proposition for prospective clients is, let me show you. If you don't like it, don't do anything. Don't pay me. If it does what it says, then you pay me.
Well, the downtime alone for servicing vehicles, anyone in a fleet environment or anyone dealing with vehicles on a regular basis would certainly understand that. Anyone who's got a business that revolves around having a piece of equipment operating, that alone could be a huge savings. And then additionally, you had some fuel savings, some efficiency added to that. All those are great check marks. And so what are you finding from the torch? The torch sounds very interesting. So what is it like when this torch is fired up? Is there much difference between using acetylene? Does it look different? The process is the same at the end of the day. It's still going to cut through steel.
It's a little bit different than cutting with a torch. It takes, the way you have to hold your hands a little bit. It takes 15 minutes to learn, but it's very, very trainable. But literally you plug it in, turn it on, put water in it, start making flame, and cut steel with it. When you're done, turn it off.
Once that's implemented, obviously, any welding shop and what have you, machine shop is going to be able to use that type of thing. How do you see this being used, let's say, on an on-site location? Do you have a mobile truck that you kind of would run these with? Is that one of the ideas?
If you're a homeowner or own a shop that does welding of any kind, and you see this, you're going to want it. There's no question. I've had acetylene tanks in my shop my entire life. So I know acetylene. I know the gases market, know how to use it. And this thing just replaces it. Now, one thing is you can get, it's still experimental technology. We're still developing it. We're not making green hydrogens because we're using a gas generator to make power to run the hydrogen generator. So there's a direct correlation between more voltage, more amperage, more hydrogen produced per hour. So our big machines are making about 1,500 liters of hydrogen per hour. That's a 220 volt. We recently developed a 110 volt machine, which would be more like a shop. And we tuned it down a little bit to where it's making about 600 liters per hour. So that an average shop owner, there's very, very little chance that they're going to get in trouble with it. The really nice thing about it is the shop owners, they can start this machine, start the vehicle or whatever equipment and walk away from it. It's got technology. If the engine stops, the machine will stop. So we've got the safety stuff checked into it. And so it allows a serious increase in labor realization rate. And so that we've just, within the last month, brought those to market to where now that we can place machines either on a lease or a sale basis. So that's just been within the last month. So it's constant innovations, constant changing. Bruce, our economic development guy, put a guy on my schedule to go to lunch. He's making drones that use small miniature jet engines for the agricultural space. So now another great friend, he spent some time with us. He saw that he's retired from the Air Force aviation space and mechanical engineer, good people. So he came over and spent some time with the shop with us. And now he's, we're going to be able to figure out how to decarbonize jet engines and at a scale that we can get to right now. Our machines are not big enough to do jet engines on major aircraft. On small aircraft, they are. Most aircraft engines are internal combustion engines, and if it's an internal combustion engine, it has got a carbon problem. So through the pivotal relationship, and many of my flight instructors, they lived in other parts of the country, and they would just fly in for the week when I'm there training. So and I get deeply, deeply involved with these flight engineers and flight instructors and all these guys, and they're interested in what we're doing with hydrogen. So, amazing bonds and relationships. And they're all telling me, you got to decarbonize aviation. I'm like, how in the world do I do that? Well, just all these pieces just keep getting put in place. And when we first started talking about this aircraft, I said, well, how do we get insurance? Because you don't. There's nobody going to insure it. Not for a while. We're working on it. Okay. And I'd ask a few other questions before I bid off. And they said, Dean, those are problems that we're going to have in the future, and we know it, but we don't have them today. I got to solve today's problem today. I'll deal with tomorrow's problem tomorrow. We're not going to focus on tomorrow's problem. We're going to solve this problem that we have today. So that's been a real eye opener. And through that series of events, I've learned to just focus on whatever I've got to for the next 5 minutes and make that decision and do that right. And then 5 minutes later, I'll have something else to deal with. That's been incredible to learn to see that in them and then be reminded of what I learned that when I was working those SEAL teams and on the submarines. But then, you get 30 years of in between, and you forget that stuff. And then just to be totally immersed in that world again is an absolute godsend. That is a blessing that I cannot measure.
Speaking of thinking about the next few minutes, we're going to be back in a few minutes with Dean, and we're going to hear more about upcoming innovations happening in his world that we can all participate in and think about as we build a bigger and brighter future for tomorrow.